With this hour with a bird's eye view of the U.S. economy. It looks like it's all going in the right direction, but take a look at this. On Friday, a pair of readings showed that the U.S. consumer is not in good spirits. Spending was down roughly 0.1% last month, and consumer sentiment fell also more than expected. As we know, the consumer is a big driving force of the U.S. economy, accounting for 2/3 of the overall growth. But reports come after a day that we learned that the U.S. economy failed to grow last quarter. In fact, it actually shrank 1%. Initial estimates said that the economy squeezed out a very small gain. And all this means that next week's jobs report will be even bigger and likely grab more attention than usual. Economists polled by Bloomberg say the U.S. probably added close to 200,000 new jobs last month, but the unemployment rate likely nudged up to 6.4%. It was at 6.3 last month. That's the lowest since 2008. Also on tap next week will be the readings on the U.S. service sector, manufacturing, and the Federal Reserve's Beige Book on the state of the U.S. economy. So we have a lot of data points to go through. For more on how we analyze all of this, Peter Morici, Professor of International Business at the University of Maryland. Welcome back. It's good to see you, sir.
Nice to be with you.
Professor, I should say, with
Thank
respect.
you.
We have a lot of data points, and the bulls would argue that the economy is fine, and these are small little data points, and we'll blame the weather. The bears will argue that this is not sustainable. What do you think?
Well, I think the economy is recovering, that the decline in the first quarter was a one-off, tough winter. There were some other things going on. However, the recovery won't be as strong as we'd like this year. Residential construction, new home purchases aren't recovering as quickly as we thought they should.
Can I interrupt you on that? They're not recovering. The data doesn't show the number of sales because there aren't enough new homes being built. I mean, some would argue that.
Well, if people will buy the new homes, they will be built because there's plenty of land to build them on. The reality is that many young people can't enter the housing market because of the very high debt they have from their educations, and many young people aren't finding jobs that pay well enough. If you look at each demographic group, the group that took the hardest hit from the Great Recession and whose incomes have recovered the least are people in their 20s.
I thought it was journalists.
Professors.
Professors. Look, I mean, this is a serious topic because we're trying to figure out what direction America is going to go into, because ultimately that will impact the rest of the world. And if you look at the figures most recently, the jobs figures, they have gone in the right direction, right? America is creating 100, 200,000 jobs, but people are still saying it's not enough. And so my question to you is, what's enough?
Well, it's about double that. If we were to create 350 to 400,000 jobs, then we wouldn't have the following kind of statistic. 1 out of every 6 men between the ages of 25 and 54 doesn't have a job. Not all of them are classified as unemployed because some of them have quit looking. That's an appalling statistic. That kind of statistic would go away. America grew during the Reagan-Carter years, Republicans, Democrats, at about 3.5% a year. Over the last 15 years, Bush, Obama, 1.6%. Not a good story.
Look at Europe. Look at Asia. Europe's recovering. The disaster was averted. China, people were worried about a big, giant slowdown that hasn't happened as of yet. And the world seems to be, is this the normal world we should get used to? Is this the new normal?
I think for now, yes. There's a lot of imbalance in the world. China's growing faster than everyone else. But that, in turn, comes out of everyone else's growth. If China would actually slow down a little bit, other countries would grow more rapidly.
Well, they could catch up, too.
Well, that's true. China's in catch-up mode. But to some degree, the manufacturing jobs that have emerged in China have come at the expense of the United States and other Western countries. But in the West, there are manifest structural problems of their own manufacture that they need to address if they're going to grow properly, including the United States.
When you look around the world, and we mentioned some of these countries, is there an area in the world that you're most worried about?
I'm worried about every area. I'm worried about China overheating because of all the debt in China and all the loans. And you know, you talked in the last segment about them lowering the reserve requirement, which means they're going to be lending more money to businesses when they're really overlent. I worry that Europe really isn't addressing its structural woes. 25% unemployment, Portugal, Spain, Greece, that's way too high. And it's not going to come down very quickly at all.
I mean, it sounds like the entire world, and the U.S. included, has a debt problem. It's not just China, it's not just Europe, it's also the U.S. I mean, what's the solution? Because there's not the political will to make the cuts necessary to bring down the debt, it doesn't seem like.
We have all been borrowing because we all have not been growing in a healthy way. In China, there's been too much of a bubble. In the West, there hasn't been enough growth. We need to get people back to work, and we need to do that by developing new industries and solving our problems. You take climate change. Climate change, if addressed on a U.S. level, we won't make any progress. We're too small. If addressed on a global level, it would create all kinds of opportunities for new industries, services, jobs. It would require universities to shift what they train, but it can be done.
Now, you're a professor, so I'm going to ask you this because it's graduation time. We're running a whole series on graduating classes. If you were 22 years old right now, and you're graduating, what should your major be?
Oh, there's a lot of choices. Engineering is one. There's always need for people who are in engineering, and other ones in the medical sciences and so forth. The trick is to do something where there's a specific need and it is applied. What's going away is the age of the generalist. The notion of getting a liberal arts degree in economics, for example, and expecting to go to Wall Street and get a job. Today they hire finance majors.
What if you're bad at math?
If you're bad at math, you can become a lawyer. You can become a journalist.
I can see a lot of lawyers laughing about this. Back to the stock market and back to the economy.
Law is the one graduate degree that doesn't have a math requirement.
I'm going to tell my buddies that who are lawyers. Look, the stock market has been doing great around the world, whether it's in the U.S., whether it's recovering in Asia or Europe. And a lot of people say, hey, the growth doesn't support where the stock market valuations are. I know you're not an expert at this, but I just want to pick your brain. What do you think?
Well, the S&P 500, record levels, they earn more than half their profits abroad. American companies have become very good at making profits wherever there are profits to be made. If there aren't profits to be made in the United States, then they'll make them in China or Australia or Greece or Sweden. We're very good at finding. We're the modern Dutchman. Ever meet a poor Dutchman? No, it's a small economy, but they invest all over the world. America is becoming the modern Holland.
Peter Morici, it's great to have you, and how appropriate. It's a Friday night here. Thank you very much. It's good to see you, sir.